But there's something profoundly revealing about silence. It forces clarity in a way that words never can. And when she leaves, when she pulls away or lets the connection slip into the quiet, what happens next is not what most men expect. Because you assume she's moved on, you assume she's unbothered. But before she even thinks about coming back, something always happens. She has to experience the emptiness she created. You were there, fully present, showing up when it mattered, and not just in the big moments, but in the small ones, checking in, remembering details, offering consistency when life felt chaotic. She didn't always recognize it in the moment, but your presence was a stabilizing force. And once it's gone, that absence begins to echo. At first, she distracts herself, maybe even convinces herself it was the right move. There's freedom now, no expectations, no emotional responsibility. But as the days pass and the distractions fade, something deeper sets in. This quiet realization that what she thought would feel like relief now feels a little like being lost. And that feeling, it doesn't announce itself. It creeps in. It lingers when she least expects it. Late at night, in the silence after a long day, or in the middle of a conversation that feels empty compared to the ones she had with you, she'll scroll through her phone and realize your messages aren't there anymore. Your name doesn't light up her screen. And she doesn't know what you're thinking now. Whether you're hurting, whether you've moved on, whether you've finally learned to live without her, that lack of knowledge, it starts to dig at her. Because for so long she was certain of your loyalty, of your effort. And now, that certainty is gone. And here's the deeper truth. It's not the loss of you that unsettles her at first. It's the loss of who she was when she was with you. You brought out parts of her she can't replicate on her own. You listened when she doubted herself. You steadied her when her emotions got chaotic. You reminded her who she was when she forgot. And now, without that mirror, without that presence, she starts to feel the void. Not just of a man, but of meaning. That's what happens before she comes back. Always. She has to sit with what she's lost. Not in a reactive, dramatic way, but in the stillness. In that strange, cold realization that life doesn't feel warmer without you in it. And it's in that space where she feels her choices closing in on her that she starts to wonder if the door is still open. She won't say it right away, but you'll see it in the shift. And that shift always starts with silence that suddenly doesn't feel empowering to her anymore. Because that silence becomes the very thing that haunts her. She'll act like she's unbothered. It's the first thing you'll notice. There's this performance, subtle but calculated, where she shows the world she's fine. She posts pictures, smiles in groups, fills her time with distractions, and presents an image of strength. And for a while, you might even believe it. You might think, maybe she really doesn't care. Maybe I didn't mean that much to her. But here's the part most people miss. What she's showing you isn't how she feels. It's how she wants to be seen. You see, when someone starts projecting detachment so aggressively, it usually means they're running from something. Because genuine peace doesn't have to scream for attention. Real closure doesn't need to be on display. But insecurity does. Emotional conflict does. And regret, buried beneath pride, tries to disguise itself as confidence. She's trying to convince herself, not just the world, that she's made the right decision. Because deep down, there's a war between her ego and her heart, and the louder her ego gets, the more she broadcasts that she's fine without you, the clearer it becomes that there's something unresolved, something pulling at her. And no matter how much she wants to bury that feeling, it doesn't go away. It just finds quieter places to speak. But that's the irony. The one pretending to be indifferent is often the one who cares the most but doesn't know how to face it. It's easier to hide behind indifference than admit vulnerability. Because if she admits she misses you, she has to face the reasons she pushed you away in the first place. She has to confront what she did or didn't do that led to the silence between you now. And for many, that kind of honesty is too heavy to carry. So she keeps up the show, keeps smiling in public, keeps responding with coldness, maybe even starts talking to someone new, But if you've truly stepped back, if you've withdrawn your energy, your attention, your emotional availability, she feels it. It hits her in ways she won't admit. Not yet, but it does. Because people don't miss the noise, they miss the meaning, they miss the safety. And she will too. Eventually the facade cracks. Not publicly, not where others can see, but in private. When the crowd thins out and she's left with her own thoughts, that's when the silence you left behind becomes deafening. Not because it's loud, but because it's honest. Because it reflects everything she's tried to ignore. And in that moment, when the pretending doesn't work anymore, she realizes the act wasn't to protect her from you, it was to protect her from the truth about herself. What most people don't realize is that curiosity is often the first sign that something has shifted internally. Before there's a message, before there's a call, before there's any direct attempt to reconnect, there's a silent pull, a quiet wondering, and it starts to grow. It begins with her checking up on you in ways that don't seem obvious, watching your stories, asking mutual friends about you, looking through your old photos, revisiting your messages, even if she doesn't respond. That's where the truth begins to surface. She doesn't come right out and say it because that would mean lowering her guard, and pride doesn't fall easily. So instead, it slips through in smaller, less obvious ways. You might catch her name popping up in your story views more often. Maybe she suddenly likes an old post. Or you hear from someone you both know that she brought you up. Casually, of course, but her voice gave something away. That's not coincidence. That's the first crack in the armor. That's her testing the waters without getting her feet wet. It's in those subtle behaviors where her emotional uncertainty reveals itself. Because even if she left, even if she said she didn't care or acted indifferent for weeks or months, when she starts to pay attention again, it's because something inside her is unresolved. Something is tugging at her. She wants to know if you've moved on, if you've forgotten, if you're still there emotionally. She wants confirmation without confrontation. And most of the time, she's not even fully aware that she's doing it. That curiosity, that silent interest, it's not just a habit, it's a psychological shift. It means she's no longer at peace with the version of the story she told herself. Maybe at first she believed she made the right choice, maybe she convinced herself you weren't the one, but now something doesn't add up. The closure she thought she had feels incomplete. The relief she expected hasn't arrived, and so the questions begin, not the kind she asks out loud, the kind she can't avoid in her own mind. That's the moment that matters, not when she says she misses you, but when she starts wondering if she does, when the silence you left behind starts echoing louder than any words you could have said, because that's what will eat away at her, the uncertainty, the not knowing. It's not rejection that hurts people most, it's being forgotten. It's feeling like the one who once cared doesn't anymore. And when that thought starts haunting her, that's when the truth begins to surface. It's strange how people will pretend they're unaffected, that walking away didn't touch them at all, especially when pride is involved. They'll keep their face calm, their tone flat, their posts cheerful, as if none of it mattered. But deep beneath that mask is something else, something unsettled. And often you won't see it in their words. You'll see it in their silence. Because when someone starts to feel the weight of absence, the first thing they do isn't admit it. It's overcompensate for it. She might go out more, post more, show off how free and happy she is without you. There might be photos with friends, captions about self-love or new beginnings. But that's not always what it appears to be. When someone truly moves on, they don't need to advertise it. They just do. It's only when there's a hole left behind that people try to fill it with noise, with attention, with curated displays of independence. But independence doesn't require validation. The need for an audience reveals something deeper, an inner tension that's still unresolved. And here's where it gets interesting. When she starts to feel your absence, not just intellectually, but emotionally, that's when something flips. That moment when she sits alone, phone in hand, tempted to text but doesn't. When she hovers over your name, remembering the comfort you used to offer. When the silence stops feeling like strength and starts feeling like isolation. That's when it gets to her. And not because you did anything, but because you didn't. Because you didn't chase, you didn't beg, you let her go. It's in that space, that stillness, that the mind starts to revisit the past with new eyes. Not through the lens of anger or frustration, but reflection. She remembers the way you showed up, the way you listened, the small things you did that she might have taken for granted. It doesn't all come back at once, but it comes in waves, a song, a scent, a moment that reminds her of what you once shared and what she no longer has. And that contrast between the presence you were and the emptiness that followed begins to haunt her. She won't say it, not right away. She might not even understand it fully herself. But it'll show in her restlessness, in her attempts to distract herself, in the cracks between her smiles. Because you can't fake peace. And once the act wears thin, she's left with the realization that letting go didn't bring her what she expected. That's when it starts to eat at her. Not because she needs you to validate her, but because she's finally beginning to understand what your absence truly means, and by then it's not about what you do, it's about what you don't. One of the things that often goes unnoticed is how silence can expose the truth far more than confrontation ever could. When you stop reaching out, when you stop explaining, arguing, justifying, something shifts. Not just in you, but in her. At first, she might feel victorious, thinking she's won some silent battle, that your silence means indifference. She'll interpret your stillness as proof that she was right to walk away, to test your limits, to take you for granted. But give it time, and that silence turns into a mirror she can't escape. Because when someone is used to being chased, when they're accustomed to having your attention at their fingertips, the moment that dynamic disappears, it creates dissonance. A kind of confusion. She'll start to question things she once felt sure about. Why aren't you reacting? Why haven't you checked in? Why are you suddenly so composed, so unavailable? That quiet presence you once offered, now replaced by your complete absence, begins to speak louder than any words you could have said. And that dissonance, it lingers. People don't always realize the damage they've done until the opportunity for repair is no longer there. You giving space, stepping back, withdrawing your energy, that isn't spite, it's clarity, it's self-respect. And that, more than anything, begins to haunt the person who misjudged your value, not because they suddenly become enlightened or transformed, but because they begin to feel the consequences of their own miscalculations. They begin to feel the difference between what was real and what they assumed would always be there. She'll pretend it doesn't matter. Maybe she'll even double down on the act, being more cheerful, more distant, more engaged with others. But underneath it, something will be stirring. It always does when someone is met with silence where they once found unconditional availability. And it's in that stillness that accountability starts to take root. Not necessarily out of guilt, but out of contrast. She'll realize that while she expected you to stay in orbit, you've broken free. And now the attention she once dismissed has become the absence she can't ignore. There's a strange irony to all of it, that what truly shifts a person's perspective is not your pleading, not your explanation, but your exit, your stillness, your refusal to engage in the same cycles. That's what sticks. That's what echoes, not in the moment, but in the days and weeks that follow. Because while words can be rationalized away, silence sits in the back of the mind, unresolved. And when that silence becomes louder than anything she's hearing from the outside world, it's no longer about you leaving, it's about her being left with herself. The truth is, when she starts to remember the small things, the details that no one else really noticed about her, that's when you'll know something shifted. That's when she'll begin to realize that what she lost wasn't just a person, but a presence that saw her fully. You didn't just respond to the surface. You paid attention to the nuances, the patterns, the little quirks that made her feel like she mattered. You remembered the way her tone would change when something was really bothering her, even when she said she was fine. You knew what calmed her down, what lifted her spirit, what made her laugh when she didn't want to. When someone feels truly seen, they might take it for granted in the moment, But the absence of that kind of awareness becomes glaring once it's gone, especially when they start interacting with others who don't notice, or worse, don't care about the layers you effortlessly understood. It's easy to be surrounded by attention and still feel unseen. And when she begins to feel that hollow difference between attention and understanding, she'll start to look back. And it doesn't hit all at once, it creeps in slowly. Maybe she hears a song that reminds her of something you said. Or maybe she passes a place you once went to together, and the memory isn't just visual, it's emotional. It carries the weight of being understood. And in that moment, she'll begin to miss you in a way that goes beyond nostalgia. It's not just about missing someone, it's about realizing that the space you held can't be replicated with just anyone. This is when regret sets in, not because she didn't see your worth entirely, but because she assumed it was replaceable. She thought someone else could fill that role, someone newer, more exciting, or simply different. But what she's finding instead is that familiarity doesn't equate to depth, and presence doesn't guarantee connection. She'll realize that people can be around her without ever really reaching her. And when that realization sinks in, it won't just be longing, it will be a kind of internal conflict. Because she'll remember how she pushed you away, how she treated your patience as weakness, your attention as obligation. That's the moment the pride begins to crack. The moment the silence you left behind begins to echo. It's no longer just about missing you. It becomes a deeper recognition that she underestimated what she had. And that's when the weight of your absence becomes unbearable, not because she needs someone, but because she lost someone who truly saw her, and that is not something she can easily forget.